we're gonna give you the #1 strength exercise that you can use for the shot put, and we're gonna start right now. So when we're looking at the shot, what is it? We've got to break it down as simple as possible if we're looking at a 7-foot circle. Okay, we're gonna have a 4-kilo implement if we're in high school, if we're a female, right? Or even if we're post-collegiate, if we're professional, we're throwing a 4-kilo shot. If we're in high school and we're a dude, we're gonna be throwing a 12-pound shot, or in some countries, maybe a 5-kilo implement. And then as we get to the junior ranks, that's gonna be a 6-kilo implement. And then as we get to the collegiate and post-collegiate ranks, that's gonna be 16 pounds. Now, when we're in that 7-foot circle, we have to look at how quickly can we accelerate this implement to throw it as long as possible, okay? So that's really what it comes down to. In the simplest form, we have to get as fast as possible with really, really good technique. That good technique will help us get as quick as possible and then put as much force into the implement so it goes long. We can immediately start to break down how can we accelerate things in the weight room? What exercises will lead to improvements in acceleration? And then that helps us look at technique. If we're looking at technique, we know that based off of movement patterns, based off of watching someone like Joe Kovacs or Ryan Krauser, that now we're gonna have to see, okay, we have to have really good hip mobility. We have to have really good thoracic extension, okay? We have to have really good trunk rotation. We have to be able to catch in different positions and control forces at very, very high speeds. All those different factors go into accelerating that implement as quickly as possible. So we have to look at, one, we're in a 7-foot circle, so we're limited on how far we can accelerate. We have to do it as quickly as possible. We have to be as mobile as possible. We have to use technique to do that. And then that's gonna help us look through that lens of, okay, what can we do in the weight room that's gonna help contribute to that at the absolute highest degree, okay? And I even like to look at it like, if I have a freak athlete is going to be able to accomplish a lot of different things just off of very simple movements. They have very high rates of coordination, okay? They're already starting on second base, on third base, if we use an analogy from, the baseball world. They're already starting ahead of the game. If we look at other athletes that might not be as athletic, they typically don't have as much coordination. They aren't as stable in their joints. They might not be as mobile, okay? So those guys and women are really in the batter's box, or maybe they're even in the on-deck circle. So how can we get the people who are in the on-deck circle to get to second base, to get to third base? And that is where the best strength exercise for the shot put comes into play. So what is that #1 exercise? This movement is going to help us with thoracic extension. It's going to help us even with rotation because of the mobility that we need. It's going to help us with our technical mindset, especially high school men typically just will think, I need to get angry to throw farther. I need to get mad. But they don't realize that if they focus on technique, they will actually throw things farther. In this specific movement, you have to have good technique to move heavier weight. And on top of that, there's even variations of this exercise that will help strengthen your shoulders, that will help strengthen your triceps. And so if I was on a deserted island and I only had one lift to pick to improve my overall shot putting capability, that movement would be a full snatch. Now, let me explain. If we pull from the floor and we're in this position, we are looking at a very long range of motion because we have a wider grip. And if you guys need help with your snatch technique, you can head over to peakstrength.app and you can pick up our app today where you will learn exactly how to snatch perfectly. And so when we're pulling off of the floor, we need to make sure that we're having really, really good posture. We need to make sure that we're loading our hamstrings and loading our posterior chain, loading our lower back. Okay, and we want to think about this, and this is where we're going to go with a little bit of a technical cue. If I looked at the snatch and I specified the snatch movement pattern with a sound, okay, this sounds crazy. That sound would be very similar to a zipper. It would go slow to fast. It would go zip. Now, if we watch someone throw like Ryan Krauser, Josh Awatunde, these athletes throw slow to fast with very precise technique. And if you could put a sound to their movement pattern, it would be zip, So that's something that we have to consider. There's technical process involved in the snatch, and if we can look at even when that bar gets past the knees, we're gonna be in hip flexion, we're gonna be in knee flexion, and that's going to be very, very similar to the exact position that we're in when the right leg, if we're a right-handed thrower, grounds in the middle of the circle. And when that happens, we want to load and get that left leg to the front, and we're gonna load our hip, right? And if we can load our hip and on the finish, extend our hip here, that's gonna help accelerate that implement even more. Now, another key factor that I'm gonna bring up is that when you're in the bottom position of a full snatch, you're gonna improve your ankle dorsiflexion, okay? That's a key concept behind actually sweeping out of the back of the circle. We're also gonna improve our plantar flexion on the finish. That's gonna be another key concept when we're grounding in the middle. Dorsiflexion will also happen on the finish on that left leg to a point. So we've gotta think about all those different aspects, mobility-wise, technique-wise, and all those different things on how that's going to increase our distance. Now, I'm gonna share two other anecdotes with you. If we look at the snatch technique, okay, and if we try and think about the overall improvement of it, there's a couple different factors. We have to accelerate as quickly as possible, but we can also use other variations. Let's take, Charles Poliquin talked about doing a muscle snatch in reverse, so doing like a slow eccentric. If we catch that snatch overhead, one, that's gonna help lengthen our pecs. That's gonna lead to greater shoulder stability and even tricep strength. Finally, I'm gonna use another example. Norik Vardanian, who's a 2012 Olympian, he lifted for Armenia, he also lifted for the United States. He was a former American record holder in the snatch. He has incredible technique in weightlifting. He came to our gym and he wanted to try to throw the shot put for fun. He wanted to try to throw the shot. Picks up a 16-pound shot. He's never thrown the shot ever in his entire life. He was 94 kilos, so he'd walk around about 215 pounds. Never touched the shot ever. Gets in, does a little shuffle, throws it, has no flick off of his hand and threw over 14 meters. This is a guy who could snatch over 170 kilos. So he knew technique to a point. He knew how to manipulate the implement at high speeds, and he also knew how to apply a large amount of force in a short period of time. So when we're looking at the best strength technique for the shot put, I like to look at it as it's going to improve our movement vocabulary. It's going to improve our rate of coordination. It's going to improve our mobility. Okay, it's going to improve our ability to think logically when we're thinking about applying force. And I also look at it as this lift is for making the athlete who is in the batter's box or who is in the on-deck circle to get to second base. This is going to be that low-hanging fruit that if you can learn how to do this effectively and you spend 6 to 9 months honing in on your technique, all of a sudden at the end of those 9 months, you understand how to move this implement, in the case of a barbell, at very high speeds, and that's gonna transfer over to the shot circle. So I recommend, look at it for what it is. Look at it as we're trying to improve the athlete that doesn't have that high rate of coordination. We're trying to look at improving that mobility, which is a key concept that a lot of high school kids struggle with. So try the snatch out today. Head over to throwsuniversity.com if you need help with your programming. If you need help with your technique, you can pick up a technical analysis and make sure today that you implement the full snatch into your training program so that you can drop some bombs. Until next time, peace.